Hello and welcome to MindShifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Thursday, May 8th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives, as we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeannie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, it will take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 20 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can also download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download from that page a whole host of audio files or shows just like this one where people have been stepped through the worksheet process. And if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you and help you get the maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. And furthermore, if you choose to, you can go to your app store and type in the three words, Heartland, Aramaic, Forgiveness. Heartland, all one word, Heartland. Aramaic, Aramaic. And if you do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. And if you tap on that, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives. And secondarily, because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we strongly encourage you to do so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeannie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. And if we get a question or a comment from you, we'll address it on the internet show, and then as time allows, send you a notification about what day and time that occurred, so you can listen back to the archives for your feedback or input. Alternatively, if you're able to join us on Zoom, you can call in through your phone, or you can get on the internet and type in our meeting ID. The Zoom meeting ID is 853-2357-4173. Again, the Zoom meeting ID is 853-2357-4173. And when you join us, either through your phone call, you can call one of the numbers that the Zoom office has available and just give them that meeting ID, or you can be on your phone or laptop through the internet, and then you can take the opportunity to either share your video or not, and mute yourself or not. I've been playing with the idea of changing the settings so that instead of having people pop into Zoom and automatically have the microphone live, that they'll pop in and it'll be muted unless they request to be unmuted. So that's what we have going here. We are here to try and help support people in using these tools to improve the quality of their lives and their relationships. And if there's any little thing that we might do to assist you in that way, please let us know. As I was looking at the show today, I was thinking about topics I might want to share before getting back into reading from the book A Walk in the Physical. And what came to me very strongly is, as I was listening again back to part of the two shows, that Monday and Tuesday, that Michael did, they posted them on Podbean. These are replay shows. And I think they titled them something like "What is God?" Part 1 and Part 2. I would have guessed that they're more like "What is the world?" Part 1 and Part 2, but leave it to them to choose their own titles. Yeah, the name of God, Part 1 and Part 2. The point is, as I was listening to them, I was talking yesterday about what a really nice set of hours that is for listening, for getting exposure to the core material about the reality management worksheet, about the foundations of how the Course in Miracles and the information from the Kabbalic manuscript, which was the oldest known copy of the New Testament that they were busy trying to translate from the ancient Aramaic directly into English. And the thing that really struck me to talk about today is that at deeper and deeper levels, it's so important for each and every one of us to understand that these teachings are not about the teacher. They're just about the teaching. And every person is just another person. So it doesn't matter if Guy Finley and Michael Singer and Michael Ryce and Diederik Wolsak are all talking about the same thing. It doesn't matter that they have slightly different ways for talking about it. It doesn't matter that there is we're having some technical difficulties. It doesn't matter that there might be different stories, different labels for things, different names for the dynamics. What really counts is that the truth is not contained in the words you're hearing or in the words someone is speaking. The truth comes and is contained in life itself, in your experience, and in your ability to discern for yourself when you're coming from a place of clarity, which means you'll be aware of your true nature as love, which means you'll be have ready access to emotional states like compassion. That's what counts. Not the words, not the stories, not who's saying them. And at another level, I suppose it's back to the adage of please don't put anybody up on a pedestal and don't put anybody down in a pit. There isn't anybody who's any better than you. There isn't anybody who's any worse than you in an absolute sense. We're all just beings of brilliance and light who either are directly aware of that and acting from that and extending that loving energy, or we are beings of brilliance and light who have either temporarily forgotten or yet to discover our brilliance. So here's hoping that you can get some benefit if you choose to listen to Monday and Tuesday's half of the MindShifter Radio that was published on Podbean, but then will be out on YouTube and eventually on Apple Podcasts. And give a listen and let us know what you think. Let us know if you're of the same opinion that it's a really good refresher of the fundamentals of this work and how we've observed that we are the ones creating our experience of life, and that we've been given this precious miracle of life, and yet it isn't what we're seeing. It isn't that our perception is not the same as the gift of life. So it seems as though we're having a little technical difficulty. It would be delightful if someone either texted me or put up a hand to say that they are able to hear me.
I can hear you, Dr. Tim.
Okay, great, because my picture is frozen, so thank you for that.
Yep. And welcome. I have a quote.
Go ahead.
Fits right in with what you've been saying. Miroslav Volf, and you don't have to know who he is. He was a professor at Yale Divinity School and an author and a theologian. He is quoting Abraham Joshua Heschel. And he says, the question is asked, why is the Torah so concerned with idolatry? You might think it is because God has no image, and any image of God is therefore a distortion. But Heschel read the commandment differently. He said, no, it is precisely because God has an image that idols are forbidden. You are the image of God. But the only medium in which you can shape that image is that of your entire life. To take anything less than a full, living, breathing human being and try to create God's image out of it, that diminishes the divine and is considered idolatry. You can't make God's image. You can only be God's image. That's the quote.
Beautifully said. And as you mentioned, perfectly in line with the lesson from Monday and Tuesday in the second hour that Michael Ryce was talking about, that he titled The Name of God. But I would imagine that from what I've listened to, it's a lot more like his fundamental workshop, which used to be called Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Because he discusses so many of the core principles that go into the worksheet process.
Yeah, Dr. Tim, I can see that your video is frozen in a look of great surprise. It really caught a great face. Probably you can see that too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's not a bad one to represent the whole deal.
Yeah,
But
well,
we can hear you though. So,
okay.
oh, now you're moving.
Well, I changed the camera. I have a lesser quality camera, and some, technical stuff. It just got stuck a little bit.
Mm.
But the idea of the quote that you just read, it feeds so beautifully into the two talks that Michael gave that are available from Monday and Tuesday. And I remember when I first got introduced to the idea that there's a line in the Course in Miracles that says, perception was made as an attack on God. And my brain just went sideways when I heard that. It took me probably months and many multiple repetitions before I was able to make sense of that. And the essence of it is, as Dr. Michael Ryce talks so extensively about in his video on what is the world as a lesson from the Course in Miracles, that there is the world of actuality. There is this world of energy fields within energy fields within energy fields that has been provided for us and that we're born into at a certain level of scale in the physical world. And then each of us is creating our active process of perception. Each of us creates our own world, our own belief systems, our own experiences. And as Michael talks about in the lesson, he says, how many times have you been in a situation where somebody accused you of saying something that you know you never said, or doing something that you know you never did? And when you hear a lecture like this, and then you learn about the perception and you learn about the veil over the actuality of life that comes from our perception and the potential of the shimmering radiance underneath, you start to think, oh yeah, so that's what those people were doing when they were angry at me and they thought I said or something I didn't say or did something I didn't do. They must be, distorted in their perceptions. And we're just so ready to see that when somebody else does it. But what he points out in his talk is, it's really difficult for us to understand that anytime we're agitated, angry, sad, scared, hurt, or frustrated, it's because the same process is happening with us. We are not seeing the whole truth of what's going on in the world in that moment. In that moment, if we're aware of a tightness or a tension or a contraction or a constriction, or any of those emotions that we might label negative, what's happened right before that is we chose to focus on either a tiny bit of information that is not really relevant to the big picture, or we chose to focus on a relevant piece of information, but we threw an interpretation on it that's not accurate, that's very limited, that comes from our past experiences. So we are literally projecting the content of our past onto the present moment in a negative way. And it's not productive to act from that space. When we have a negative emotion, a tightness or a tension or a constriction active in our mind, the most important thing for us to do is choose to stop. Like the idea of having Michael talks about driving down the mountainside. It's late at night, and it's dark, and it's cloudless, and all of a sudden the car lights go out. And if the car lights go out when we're driving down the mountainside late at night, it's not a good thing to think, well, you know what, I know this road pretty well. I've been here a lot. It's one of my favorite roads. I know what I should probably do. I should probably just keep driving, slow down just a little bit, and then about 30 feet, turn to the left slightly. That's insane. If we can't see where we're going, the only reasonable thing to do is stop the car. So, if you think in terms of anytime you're feeling a negative emotional state, what it means is your lights are out. Your perception is going to be colored by that filter. In other words, false data or corrupt data, as Michael Ryce calls it. The only reasonable thing to do is say, okay, I better stop what I'm doing. I better take a breath, turn the focus inside, find a way to clear up what's happening in my perception so that I have a restoration of good, clear vision, accurate assessment of what's going on. And if I choose to do that, chances are really, really improved that I'll be more happy with, I'll be more satisfied with the results, the consequences of whatever I choose. And if I choose to act from what my mind is telling me when I'm upset, what's going to happen is I'm going to drastically increase the probability that I will not be happy with the results. So that's what I have to offer in that regard. I don't know how to say it. I feel like the words I've spoken about this are totally inadequate for the impact that I would like to be able to share. The idea that it really is not the messenger, and that the truth is not contained in the words you're hearing. Right? If you hear somebody say something and you go, oh, that's so true, it's not the words that are the truth. Again, the word is not the thing, and what we're trying to talk about, we're just pointing a finger at the moon, but the finger that's pointing at the moon is not the same as the moon. The words we say about a thing are not the same as the thing. Every time you think you know a person, you're living in a lie. What you've done is you've taken a little snapshot or a Polaroid, like one tiny frame out of a, let's say a 57-year movie. And you're looking at that one little frame and you say, oh, I know what the movie is. It's not possible. So every time you think, oh, I know the truth, you're stuck. What you're doing in that moment is looking at a piece of the past that your mind has captured and labeled. It's a symbol of a symbol. In other words, it's words about an experience you had or about an object or a hunk of energy that you were interacting with. Your thoughts about the thing are not the thing. The words you create to try and communicate are not the things that hold the meaning. As Michael Ryce talks about, words themselves don't have any meaning. The meaning is derived or is contained in the mind of the person that gets stimulated by the vibrations of the sounds or the sights. And I just flashed on one of the examples I had. I had a 67-year-old person in my office. He was retired from a very competent job in a large company, and so very bright. And we were talking about something, and he said that every time he hears about or thinks about his friend who had passed away, he's got this really intense grief that comes up. And I said, I'd be happy to help you resolve that and move past it, and or do the grief and loss process or a worksheet. And he said, I don't want to get rid of that. And I said, oh, okay. He said, what do you mean, okay? I said, well, perhaps we have a very different definition for this word grief that you're using. He said, what do you mean? I said, grief is something that, in my experience, is a strong negative emotion that isn't necessary to be holding on to several years after someone has passed away. And it's disruptive, and it makes it difficult for people to function or be happy in life. And I said, so what's your definition? He said, well, all I'm talking about when I use that word is that every time I think of this person who's now passed away, or someone mentions his name, I just get flooded with all these warm memories, and my eyes water a little bit. And I said, oh, well, I wouldn't encourage you to get rid of that at all, and I wouldn't call that grief. So the fundamental meanings that we have for all of these different words can be inches apart, miles apart, or light years apart. And if we can understand that the vast majority of disagreements we have, certainly any that lead us to anger or upset, they're based in miscommunications, misunderstanding, often as based on something as simple as very different definitions for the core words that are involved. So what you're hearing whenever you're hearing your favorite teacher talk is not the truth. The truth is not contained in the words. In this sense, capital T truth. The definition we use for that in this work is actuality, what actually is. Not my thoughts about it, not somebody else's writings about it, not something we can argue about. We can argue all we want, but I pulled it up and I shared this of I don't know how many sessions ago, but there was a quote from Bertrand Russell about the idea of any time we get upset in an argument, it's a very strong indication that whatever it is that we think we know, we're not really very sure about. Because if you're absolutely rock solidly sure about something, and somebody walks up to you and says, well, that's not true, you are very comfortable letting them have their own opinion. But if you're moved to upset over it, it's a really good indication that you're not as certain about what you think you know. Here's the quote from Bertrand Russell from 1943. If an opinion contrary to your own makes you angry, that is a sign that you are subconsciously aware of having no good reason for thinking as you do. If someone maintains that 2 and 2 are 5, or that Iceland is on the equator, you would be better off feeling pity rather than anger, unless you know so little about arithmetic or geography that this person's opinion shakes your own contrary conviction. The most savage controversies are the ones based on matters for which there is no good evidence either way. Persecution is used in theology, not in arithmetic. Because in arithmetic there is knowledge, but in theology there's only opinion. So, whenever you find yourself getting angry about a difference of opinion, be on your guard. You will probably find, upon closer examination, that your belief is going beyond what the evidence warrants. And, the tie into this work is just a little bit away from what we talk about, how if somebody comes up to me and throws an insult at me and I feel a negative response to it, the only reason I can feel a negative response to it is if there's some part of me, conscious or otherwise, that holds a similar opinion and doesn't like it. But if I am absolutely confident that that insult doesn't relate to me, there's no upset that comes up in me. And I might offer to support the person who's throwing out a nasty comment or an insult or a negative opinion in dismantling their upset, their pain, their fear, their sadness, because I know that's the only thing that could prompt something like that to come out of them. Somebody who's walking around who is completely comfortable in their own skin is only going to say and do things that are uplifting to other people, not insulting. And that leads me to repeat something I came upon years ago, where I put it together this way to say, please don't take offense, even if it's offered. In other words, there's the recognition that I'm the only one that creates the feeling of being offended. I do that by the meaning that I throw on whatever words I think I heard. So, I'm not sure that we've read these essays, but I think we did. The small stuff is the big stuff. So I'll go back to the list of essays. And we just finished reading Love as the Healer and Healing Through Feeling. I'm not sure that we've read the series of essays on Life as Feedback, but we'll try one of those. Title of this essay from the book A Walk in the Physical by Christian Sundberg, and the title is You Are Where You Are. And Christian writes, we do not need to be hard on ourselves for being where we are. Wherever you are, whatever you have become, you are at an okay place right now. And the universe fully understands why you got to where you are. You made a lot of choices to get there. But those choices that you remember, some of them you remember, some of you do not, and it's okay that you made those choices. Not good, not bad, it's just okay. It's all right. How do we know it's all right? Because it's already happened. Simultaneously, oftentimes, spiritual growth is only possible when we recognize where we have failed. In response to our fear and the negative self-perceptions that we have bought into over the course of our lifetimes, we commonly tell ourselves stories about why we are worthy or justified. In fact, we are already worthy and justified. None of the stories are required. Meanwhile, those stories often prevent us from seeing where, in fact, we could be more loving. We can become blind to where we need to grow when we think we're already grown up. That last line, the wisdom that's in that, is woven through Dr. Michael Ryce's lecture on the circle of life and how to play it. And he says, if you want to get to some place, knowing your destination is not enough. You also need to know where you are currently. And so if you think you're 2 steps away from being perfect, but you're really 7 steps away from being perfect, but you're really certain that you're only 2 steps away, you're in a worse position than somebody who's 118 steps away from being perfect and they know right where they are. I can't move my situation forward if I don't understand my situation accurately, fully, deeply. Christian writes, being both totally okay with where you are and also simultaneously aware of your shortcomings. This requires a profound amount of both self-love and humility. Self-love and humility are not opposites. You can and should develop both simultaneously. Now, in this work, instead of self-love, we would say awareness of yourself as love. And I'll try and put that in here for that regulatory speech from the Dr. Michael Ryce approach. So being aware of your true nature as love and humility are not opposites. We can and should develop both awarenesses simultaneously. The path for doing this is a complex and personal journey that's not easily spoken of or articulated. And yet, wherever you are, you may allow yourself to recognize that it is okay that you are where you are, no matter what circumstances you find yourself in. Accepting ourselves by accepting our circumstances and our part in arriving in those circumstances, this is a powerful step toward lasting peace. Powerful step towards lasting peace. Accepting yourself as you are and celebrating yourself as you were wished to be. That's one of the sayings from a wall hanging that was in my office for many years. Life is feedback. Essay number 2. Following life's natural dynamic. Christian writes, there is a natural way that events tend to unfold, from the highest orders of magnitude to the lowest. Life follows similar patterns of development at every level. Seasons, cycles of birth and death, cycles of development from low complexity to high complexity. Patterns emerge and repeat under the ultimate direction of universal laws that the Creator has laid out in her incredibly deep wisdom. So, a sidebar here, he uses the word her, he uses the pronoun her. I switched the word God to Creator as I read that. And my mind is taking me to something that Dr. Michael Ryce uses a lot when he says a feminine elemental force, and then she, the word she. And I hope people can soften into this and get educated to the idea that feminine elemental force does not mean two separate things. Every elemental force is gendered feminine in the ancient Aramaic. It has nothing to do with male versus female. It has nothing to do with traits or characteristics. It has nothing to do with genitals. In the ancient Aramaic, when they gendered something feminine, it meant it was not solid physical. It was not something that you could directly perceive with your senses. It was something that you had to have an internal experience of. So, as Dale Allen Hoffman, who's the person who taught me most about this, would say, the breath that I blow onto my hand is masculine because I can physically feel the air, the force of the air hitting my hand. My perception of it is feminine. All elemental forces are those things that we can't experience directly, we feel the effects of, like the wind, like the heartbeat. We don't have a direct physical awareness of that which beats our heart. We feel the effect of the heart beating. So the heart beating is masculine, the sensation of the heart beating. That which beats the heart is feminine. In other words, it can't be felt with the hard physical senses. And I don't know if that sidebar was useful to people or not, but it sticks out to me whenever I hear people say a feminine elemental force. Well, that's like saying a hot, warm something. You're using two words that mean the same thing. Feminine in the ancient Aramaic is every elemental force. Every elemental force would get gendered as feminine because the elemental force is that which is not directly perceived by the physical senses. It's a power, it's a movement, it's a flow of energies, it's a set of laws that govern the physical world as it unfolds, etc. So that got triggered by Christian talking about these laws, and he goes on to write, those laws that run the physical world include feedback mechanisms both inside of us and within us. When we listen to those feedback mechanisms, we live life more smoothly. When we resist those feedback mechanisms, we experience struggle and difficulty. Oftentimes, when we choose struggle and difficulty, we do so with great effort and resolve. We do this because we think we know what will be best for us. We deeply trust the intellect to lead us toward the situation that we believe, for one or many reasons, will be optimal. In fact, we are far more limited. We are far more than our limited human intellect and intelligence. We are far more, in total, we are more than the knowledge and wisdom that we've accumulated in the world by reading books from our family, etc. We come from the spirit, which is far greater than anything contained in our earthly intellect. Spirit has a much better vantage point. That's why Michael Ryce calls it the superprocessor. This elemental force specific to humans that's implanted in each of us, that's there and it's available to help us break off the effects of our errors in thought and guide us to truth and happiness if we just ask it to. He writes, furthermore, the universal laws established per the wisdom of the whole, capital W-H-O-L-E, these laws are ultimately perfect in their operation, and so they are properly and honestly interpreted. When they are properly and honestly interpreted, they can be trusted. Thus, when making decisions in our lives, it can be beneficial to recognize the place of the intellect as a specific tool to be picked up and used at certain times and then put down at others, instead of trying to listen to what life is telling us. That's not what the intellect is for. We can always listen from the being level. Just be quiet and know. We can slow ourselves down, tap into our awareness of our true nature, learn to listen from that being level, and then he says, and turn to spirit for guidance. Oftentimes in silence and genuine humble surrender, the divine will indeed reach out to us. However, even if we cannot hear it, we can still look at the currents the flow of events in our lives for guidance. Which way is the current flowing? It might be easier to recognize than you think. The Creator's love has a way. Restlessness, creativity, understanding, forgiveness, and acceptance and joy. The way of the Creator is the way of love. And I misread this as restlessness, but the word is stresslessness. So the Creator's way is of love, creativity, understanding, forgiveness, acceptance, and joy. This is almost exactly like what the Way of Mastery tells us over and over again. What is love? Love is, it allows all things, it accepts all things, it trusts all things, and thereby transcends all things. Love is that awareness and intelligence that comes from the, you might call it the 30,000-foot perspective, the bigger picture, the picture that includes far more than what our senses can show us. Life as feedback, essay number 3, the erosion of the ego. Christian writes, the unrelenting weather of what is will always eventually erode the ego. In other words, the truth of life is always going to be wearing down the ego because the ego is always fighting against it. The ego is always trying to control it, label it, prove that the ego is more right than the flow of life itself. Christian writes, that is, that reality itself is built in such a way that over time, each conscious participant will naturally work their way through their fears to the greater states of freedom, creativity, and love that are available. That process may take a long time or a short time. However, the duration of time required is not hugely relevant. Because, as Christian writes, space-time itself is an invention. We made it up, right? All kinds of people talk about how time is a byproduct of thought. And without thought, there is no time. And if you want to test that out for yourself, just pay attention the next time you get really engrossed in something that captures you. And it might seem like you were doing it for hours and only you look at the clock and it was 5 minutes, or the reverse. It might seem like you were doing it for 5 minutes and it was 3 hours. Christian writes, the quality of your experience speaks to you about, quote, how you are doing. If your personal experience is one of peace and joy, you're following the natural way. If your personal experience is one of stress, well, that is where technology failed us and the internet went down in my office. So that's the end of our hour. I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff we call love. We actually